Hello. So this is where we left off last time with placing guide curves, at least our initial ones. I can promise you we will have to add more, unfortunately, but we can start with those for now. Let's get started to place some actual hair. So let's change hair to geometry editor, and we have two hair objects, like we got the main hair and the bangs, but I want to collapse them both to one. I don't even know if in Blender 4 you can do a join. No, you can't. You can't do a Control J yet for join geometry. So we will have to do it with geometry nodes instead. Okay, so that's easy to do. We grab our main hair, we add a new modifier, create a new one, and we bring in our bangs curves. So what we can do now is simply join them together. Now we got them both in one hair system. I want to tag these ones first, so I have a mask for each hair system later on. So I do a store named attribute, set this to Boolean, give it a value of true and call them bangs, and set them to spline. Okay, so now when I have named attribute, we have now a mask for our bangs. So if we apply this modifier just with Ctrl A over this one hovered, this is now one object. So we got the bangs as a separate curve. Just keep it as a backup for now. Let's create an empty geometry nodes again, put it above the surface deform, and let's get started with the hair. Let me just disable outline selected. Here we go. So let's check if our mask is working. We do named attribute, we have it here. Yep, we have our bangs and the main hair separated, because you want to do one after another. What we do now in this, so I'm gonna put my entire hair system only in this one hair object, so I don't have several different hair systems to maintain, but everything is living within one node tree. And since I don't use like a stack modifiers like interpolation modifier, then a noise modifier and a clump modifier, but rather build myself a node tree, I feel like I have a lot more control over it and it's more flexible. So yeah, but we still want to do one by one, so we separate the hair curves, separate geometry, and we separate it by the bangs. Okay, so now we have our bangs here and the main hair there. We can delete, disconnect. So what do we want next? We definitely need this texture in here, like the density of the main hair and also the density of the bangs. So let's bring an image texture. Let's have the density bangs, another image texture, density main hair. I would actually just collapse this maybe in an external software like, I don't know, Photoshop or GIMP, or even bake it out in Blender. But we can also just do it here in geometry nodes. The thing is, it will make the tree a bit bigger, but at least you still say procedural, so you don't bake it down. So we need a interpolate curves, interpolate hair curves, bring the bangs into the main geometry. Now it doesn't know where to go because we need to put in the surface geometry and the surface UV. And since we'll have to do it a few times, I just plug this into the group input and specify it here. So we got it all in one place. Grab this and we do the groom UV. It's not showing up here. Groom UV. Okay. So now we need to deal with our density for the banks. We grab our surface map, UV map, in each of those. Let me just maybe show you in the shader, it's more clear what I'm doing. Let's go to shader editor. Okay, so UV map, groom UV, we feed the main density, and we have the banks density. Let's go to Eevee. Come on. Okay, so we have our main density here, the banks density here. We want to grow the banks from this area, but we overpainted a bit, so we need to remove this one. So we take our banks density to a color mix, and we multiply the main density on top. So you can see we're getting our hairline where it needs to be. And this same thing right now we want to do in geometry nodes. So we don't have to back down. We could back down a map from here, but we can do a procedure in geometry nodes. That's what I was trying to say before. Where are we now? We have our main hair. Okay, so we have our banks. We use a color mix or mix color. We put the banks in the top, the density in the bottom, and we say multiply by a factor of 1. So this is now our density mask for the banks. Let's give it a frame. Let's make it in a group. And call it banks density. Need to expose the value. And let's give this a float instead. Banks density. I completely misspelled it now. Density. Okay, so we plug this into our density mask. And yep. And we already should see, we disconnect this one, we can bring it up and we have our banks and only being emitted from the front. But we straight have our interpolation issue, or yeah, it is really, where it doesn't respect any parting. So we need to set this up. In an early video, I went through how I did some modifications to its default nodes. And one of these nodes is the interpolation curves version 2, which has a part by texture and a texture input to it. So maybe you want to check out this video. I can go through again, but this would make this video longer and longer. It's gonna get long anyways. So if you please could check out the other one where I went through how to set this up, would be great. So we changed the default interpolation node to our new one. So then density, and preview this. We have the same result initially. We need to create a density, a parting mask. So let's make this our output, and we go to our head. So I have outlines that enabled, so I'm selecting the head right now, and go to texture paint. Let's create a new texture here. So we do image new, and we call it parting mask. Probably don't need 2K. Why not? Doesn't harm. Let's do 2K. Disable alpha, and that's good. Default is black. So we could do a white mask, but I'm gonna do it with red because this way we have like multiple possible partings if we want to. So I changed the white to a solid red. I just bring these ones down. In the brush settings in advanced, I disable anti-aliasing, and also in the fall off, I want to set it to constant. So this way I have like a strong constant outline without any filtering going on. Okay, if we quickly jump back to our geometry nodes and we just plug this mask in there, we can live see what's happening. So the mask is plugged in, but it's still empty. And we go back to our texture mode. We have our parting mask. And here as well. Yeah, it should be automatically updating as well. Oh well. We can now start painting in a parting. So if we change to red and maybe want to disable symmetry, we paint a nice line in the middle, go a bit beyond, boom, we have a nice parting going on. Okay, not too nice, there's something happening, let's see what it is. So if something else happens, because we are judging right now by the interpolated hair, maybe we want to go back to the main hair and quickly disable the modifier, because then we can see where the guides actually are, so where the mask needs to go as well. Go back to texture paint. Yeah, so probably before we probably have been somewhere here, and that's I was interpolating wrong, so this hair was looking to the left. So we want to go right in the middle between the guides. Here it doesn't really matter because we're not gonna use the parting density for the main hair. As long as this part or portion of the bangs is covered, it's all good. And we need to save the texture. So we save the texture. We do it under maps, groom, and the wrong one, female hairstyle. Parting mask is fine. Also, I do a non-color data, and 8-bit is enough. Okay, so this is painted. We can jump back, and if we enable our modifier again, we have now a nice parting going on. There is some hair growing from the front here, which we shouldn't really have. Maybe there's some fine values in the main density mask, like maybe there's a 0.01 and it considers at some point here you can grow hair from there. So maybe let's put in our node group where we multiplied the mask on top of another. Let's round it down. So we do a mouth node and we say greater than 0.5, seems to be working fine. So yeah, so the further we go down, the more it can extend, and probably like there's a tiny, the 0.01. You can see there is a bit of a gradient, it seems, where the hair keeps growing. That's good. 0.5. 0.5 is good. Okay, back to our hair. So we have a nice parting. Everything looks cool. What's the next step? The next step would be clumps. So, I mean, hair really is all about clumps and some noise. That's kind of all there is. So we want a few set of clumps. Let's say we have, here's our hair. We want one set of like main clumps. Give it a different color. Like these are primary clumps. And inside these primary clumps, we want to have more clumps, which basically are clumping within the primary ones. So you would have like something like this, if this makes any sense. So these clumps, the green ones, they would follow the blue ones, but there are a smaller radius. But all of them after all follow our main red guide curves. Let me get rid of that. So we need to create some guides for our first set of clumps. And the way I usually do that is by taking a portion of the hair and deleting some hair, and the remaining is gonna be my guide curves. But if you take a portion out of this hair, and let's say we take 10% of that and make a guide curves, it highly depends on the density. If we change density, we also change the amount of guide curves, which we don't want. We want them to be persistent. So we will have to set our final density already here. And in order to try this out, I want to take the entire head, image texture, take our full density mask and plug this one into main density. Because now, if we have a look at the spreadsheet, we can see how much hair we're growing on the full head. And right now we have 10.8 or 10,000 splines. A human head has between 100,000, 140,000. It depends really like on the hair color or like what type of hair. But blonde hair actually has like quite a lot. It's just thinner, so we should be around 130, 140,000 really. So therefore we want to increase the amount to, let's try 5,000. It's by far enough. 15,000. Okay, now we got 96, almost there. 18,000. 116, yeah. Let's do 19,000. Let's do 20,000, it's a nice number. Okay, so we got 130,000, which is fine. That's exactly what we want. We can unplug the other density again because we don't need it anymore. And this value now for density we will have to use as well on the main hair to make sure we have a uniform density all over and not like the bangs have more hair than they should compared to the rest of the hair. So we're gonna use a value node and grab this one here and plug it in there, because then later on we can also plug this one into the main density. Okay, your number might be different to mine, like 20,000. This is really probably because I work in a Blender scale times 10, so a cube to me is only 20 centimeters. Where's a cube? Down here. Where if we do like times 10, it's like 2 meters to me. I know, to me Blender in its default unit doesn't really work often properly, like for physics as well, like you have to enter such tiny values, and I'd rather have it 10 times bigger. Have no issues with that so far, so it's working out. But it might be that you have to change or have to set a different value here. Okay, so let's create our guide curves for our first set of clumps. For this we create a delete node, delete geometry, and we set this one to spline, and we do a random node and set this one to Boolean. So here now we can say 50% of the hair is gonna be deleted, which we need to delete more, so probably like 0.9 or even more, I guess. Let's see. Yep, so this is still way too many. We want a lot less. If you go back to the reference, ref female hairstyle, you can see these are really the main clumps she has. Like here. I should be a painter. So we don't need a lot of curves for our initial clumps. So we need to get rid of a lot more. Let's try 0.995. Oh, come on. This seems already better. 0.997. This looks about right. We have too many here, less here. Can check with the seed. Yeah, that could be working. It's a bit awkward up there. Don't really like any of those. Let's put in disk here. Oh, it is. I think this could be working fine. Just wish there would be a bit more evenly distributed. So, in a perfect case, really, you could use your groomed curves, so these ones, as the initial clump guides, which we actually could do, and let's do that. So we get rid of this, and we do a clump. Let's look it up from here. Hair guides, clump hair curves. So we grab our hair, and we grab our index. Yeah, that's working fine actually. So yeah, I mean, if you did set enough guide curves at the beginning, you can use those really as your main clumps. But obviously once you add more, then you have like maybe too many main clumps, but there's a problem for later to fight. Okay, so these are our primary clumps, and now we want to generate some secondary clumps. So we gonna do now our delete method, and we want to delete a lot less. Let's do 0.95. Let's make the hair a bit thinner now. It's hair right, set haircut profile, and let's make it 0.005. 0.002. I think it's easier to read. We try to keep it. Yeah, this is better to read. Okay, so now we have to imagine all of these are gonna be new guide curves for new clumps, and they're probably still too dense. So we won't really see any clumping going on. So we need to delete more. 0.97, maybe 0.98. Let's try with that. Okay, and here now, as well in one of my previous videos I went through. So I went through like the modified interpolation node, a modified clumping node, and a modified create guide index node. And the create guide index node is what we need here. So we got hair nodes, create guide index node. There is one built in, obviously. I just modified some things because by default it is only marking existing hair as guides, but it's not really using, you can't modify the guides, then you can't put any noise modifier or something on them. And with this custom node, it is possible. But let's come to this later. I think I'm jumping a few steps right now. Let's do our hair guides, clump hair curves. Wrong one. Put this one here. Put this one here. Okay, so this now wouldn't respect our parting. But we have in our interpolation, I exposed a parting ID, and this one we need to use in the create group ID of the create guide index node, and then the clumping, the parting is back to how it should be. So what this group ID really does is just saying per parting you have a different index, and this index gets also applied then for the curves, for the guide curves for the clumping, so they don't look at the wrong curve. Okay, but I think you can see we have like some bigger clumps and some finer internal clumps. If you make the second clump like a lot tighter, should be easy to see. Yeah, there is. Now we have here our primary clumps, which are these, and within them we have fine little clumps, which is nice. That's exactly what we want. The beauty about it is now, because we can, with this custom create guide, let me show you without. Is it general guides? Yeah, create guide index map. So if this is my main hair, these are my guides, and this is now my new geometry. And also have to connect the parting ID. Yep. Okay, so let's put this out of the way. You can see the clumps, they are very, very parallel. They're running perfectly right next to each other. And this is something I kind of want to avoid. I want to break them up a little bit. So I want to take our guide curves for these fine clumps and maybe put a noise in it. Hair curves noise. So let's just to show off, make it stronger. Disable cumulative. So cumulative just means the noise is adding on top of each other, so it looks basically back. So let's say point 1 of the curve gets moved to the right, then point 2 of the curve gets moved to the right as well, plus the additional offset it would receive anyways. If you disable cumulative, point 2 doesn't care where point 1 already is. It just goes where it needs to go. But this way it's a bit more chaotic. So let's say this. Scale is a scale, overall scale along the mesh. And the scale along curve is how scaled, how small the waves are. Where is my thing? I'm looking at it. Ach, turn it off completely. So scale along curve makes the noise just smaller or tighter. If we go to point 1, we should have like a really rough waving, and we get smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay, but we don't need anything like too brutal. I just want to break up the parallel lines a bit, so we can bring down the distance like this. Okay, but now if I go to the original, so the one which comes with Blender, this create guide index node, and I look at the guide curves, they don't have this applied, because this is not what the node does. The node really just looks at the distance from the guide curves I plug in to the entire hair, and if a hair is at the same spot, it's being marked as a guide curve. These guide curves are not actually being used really for the clumping or for the guide index. Yeah, it only creates a guide index really, it says it in the name. And the clump node has no guide input, so we have to work like this. Where on the modified version, we have our main hair here, and we have our modified guides. So these are now being used to clump the hair. Let's get rid of the other one. And let's plug this in here. And we say guide index here. Okay, so now you can see we're breaking up the clumps quite a bit. So could even go stronger, but we're getting like an overall less perfect look to it. Maybe do an offset per spline so not all of them receive the same. And this is now a lot better. So there's no parallel lines anymore. The noise might be too strong, but I think it's fine. Yeah, and here we already got our base groom done really. As you can see here, where, I don't know, let me try to visualize the guide index in a white noise. Yeah, so here you can see how the red part is going through this blue part right now. Same here, actually everywhere. And this is basically telling you we've been too lazy, we didn't place enough main guides. So we will have to come back and place some more guides. I think for now I'm saving the trouble. Maybe I'll do it later, like as a overall cleanup. But just to let you know, this is like a sign of your individual clumps, or your how do you say, primary clumps that are not enough. So there's too big of gaps in there which need to be filled up. Okay, but yeah, again, let's make this a problem for later. Everything is later. So we have here our clumps, and this already looking great. And let's put it in output. As a next step, I would go and add some random noise to random hair. So basically just like some flyaway hair. For this, I create a separate geometry node again. Separate geometry. Plug it here. And we separate again by a random value. So we need a random value again. A boolean, and we say to spline. And right now, let's make it the other way around. Let's make it like this. So our selection is this one. So we wanna, because we don't want to have like hairs on top of hairs, meaning the hairs, the overall hair is the same. So we don't want to create additional hair like where the roots could accidentally just be on the same spot as another hair. We checked before in the spreadsheet that we had like 130,000 splines on an entire head, and we don't want to change that necessarily. So that's why we just select out some of the existing hair and make this our regrowing hair, which is not as long yet, it's still shorter, so therefore it sticks out and is wilder, but it still belongs to the same scalp. So we separate maybe a bit less, 0.05. This should be fine. And on this one, we're gonna put some noise. Let's grab the hair, deformation and hair curve noise. Don't want that. Okay, so we can go a lot stronger with distance. Also, again, this disable cumulative, so it gets a bit more, it doesn't grow really. And the shape means where the noise is starting. Shape 0.5 means it goes linear down, has basically 0 at the root and has a value of 1 at the tip. If you bring the shape down to 0.2, the noise starts earlier at the hair, which is also actually quite nice. And let's make the, because we said this is probably some regrown hair as well, so we wanna do a trim hair curves. This one by default is set to replace length. I don't know why it's a default, it should be off. So now you can here adjust the overall length of a hair, or you have here the random offset. So let's say 1 meter offset. So some hairs shrink down by 1 meter. And again, since I'm times 10, it's probably like 1 decimal, 10 centimeters. Let's maybe try even more. How much is 2? Might be too much. Let's do 1. Okay. So I think this noise needs to become a lot stronger, and let's make the distance higher. And I think we probably have too many of those. And we're getting some issues going on here, so we probably need to bring the shape up a bit. Yeah, so now, and offset per curve is also a good idea. Offset per curve means each curve has its own position vector, really, or whether, let's say the noise UV vector, if they just use position, all of the hairs share the same UV. And this offset per curve just means like each hair basically has a different UV, so the noise is not the exact same pattern for all of them. So it gets a more random look to it. And if we now combine these two together, so we do a join geometry, yep. And we want to join the other one, not this. It looks a bit rough in the viewport, but we're getting some nice breakup going on. It's too much. Also, I think we should actually make the hair even shorter randomly, because it's mostly like the regrown, which is like these rebels which stick out. Okay, let's try that. So if we check now our render, and we have nothing here. Okay, let's first fix some materials. So the skin shader has this one applied, and the hair has no shade at all, so we give it a main hair shader. Yeah, this we probably talk about later. So let's just do without any of that. Okay, it looks all wrong now because I keep looking in the viewer node, not the output node, but the renderer looks at the output node. So if you go back in geometry nodes, we're only looking at this here. So if we connect this to the output node, we should get our result. And there we go. So getting somewhere. Let's make it maybe less shiny, a bit lighter. Okay, so first of all, the hair is way too thick, and according to Google, a hair is about like 0.05 millimeters. No, 0.5 millimeters. Which let's try to plug this in, and let's plug it at the end. We have one already here, a curve profile, but this I wanna use for working, so I can see what I'm doing. If I make it too thin here, you can't see anything anymore. 0.5. It's getting super thin. So that's why I put it at the end, and doing work I can see what I'm doing. So we put one here, hair, right, and we say 0.0005. Again, if I do 0.5 millimeter, this is now our half millimeter, so you can see that's about fine. Okay, so this looks nice. these clumps are too defined, so we want to find a way like to break it up a bit. There's one nice method or nice node in there, which I really like, is basically an interpolation node, but after the hair is already been created, and this is called the hair blend hair curves. So if you plug this one in, let's plug it, it doesn't matter, can plug it here. We basically do this interpolation all again. And unfortunately we have no group ID here, so we can't plug in our parting map or parting ID. This would be interesting to put like a group ID in there as well. But for now it's fine. Maybe we can get away with that. So you can change the blend radius, like how far the hair should look to find a neighbor. Let's say 0.1. And this how many neighbors it should blend in between. If we do 2, it only looks at 2 other curves and blends between those. Okay, but it's still, even if we go 0.05, still too much, but maybe we can leave it like this now. But now we're just gonna mask out most of the hair, so only a few hairs are blending through. Okay, I should use the parting mask to fix this issue. Let's try this out. Let's bring our parting mask image node. Or actually we have our guide index, our parting ID. Okay, let's try with the parting ID really. This is now I'm doing on the fly, so I didn't do it before. I might fail completely and you watching me. Okay, so now only the screen right should do the blend. Oh, no. Which it doesn't. Because it's still looking at the other hair. That's unfortunate. Okay, what does the parting ID now look like on this one? Yeah, it needs a group input really. Okay, let's do it differently. Let's also separate the banks now here, temporarily, based on the part ID. So we put this in here. Now we should have a left side and a right side. Yep. So let's clean this up a bit, push everything over. And after we separate that, we do the blend for each side of those. So we take this one out and just get rid of the viewer node. Okay, this is working fine. Let's do the same for the other side and then join them back together. So now we have both of our hairs having the blending and nothing is looking at the wrong hair. So now in terms of factor, we can just plug in a random value. Set this to, let's leave it in float. But this random value in float by default looks at each point in the hair. This is an unfortunate color. Like each point would receive a random value. What we rather want is we want a random value per hair strand. So in order to do that, in the random value node, we're gonna hook in the ID of each hair, which we can receive from hair, read, and curve info. So if you plug this in, Now we have a random value for each hair and not for the points on the hair. Okay, so if we plug this one into the factor of each of the blend nodes, we can mask out some. Because right now it's too strong. Let's put a reroute in here. And let's put a color ramp to crank this up a bit. Ramp. Color ramp. So what the color ramp is doing, now we can bring up the blacks, so we tell more hair not to be affected, and only a few ones gonna share these values. Let's get rid of that. Let's make the final. Okay, so it's not enough right now, so we need more. And there's something wrong. I didn't plug it in. Okay, so now you can see we have, it kind of fills up the gaps a bit, but the clumps are still the primary driver, but it also fills up the hair nicely. Like if you look back at the reference again, there is lots of hairs going in between the clumps as well. It's not just the solid clumps going on. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. And let's go back to the geometry nodes. Okay, we check the rendered result. This already looks quite promising. Everything looks overall a little bit flat, but this as well is we need to set more initial guide curves because there's too much just interpolation going on. Let's finish for a second. Maybe we have too much of the flyaway. However, looking at the reference again, yeah, we're having too much, and I think there might also be too long in general. Yeah, I like the hair though. It's getting nice. Let's reduce the flyaway. Geometry nodes. How long are we already? An hour. Okay, let's quickly reduce the flyaway and then maybe we call it for today. Where am I here? So let's make less. We have it here. We say 0.02. And we maybe make it overall shorter. Let's say 0.7. Let's do 0.8. But I think it's already starting to work better. Let it resolve quickly so we have a better idea of what it looks like. It's the thing about hair. In quick test runners you can't really tell what it looks like. It really needs to get rid of the noise to be able to judge. But here now you can pretty much tell, and yeah, I think it's a start. It's a start. I mean, if you want to play around further, please do so. I will maybe continue to do another video, maybe right tomorrow, to finish at least up the banks. And it looks like a big node tree, but it isn't really. We have interpolate, we have our primary clump, we have a secondary clump. This, unfortunately, we had to separate, otherwise it could be only one node. And this array is like, you know, doing the flyaway hair, and that's it. So it's really not too bad. So, but for now, we should maybe try to copy the exact settings to the main hair. Let's see what comes out of that. Let me grab all that and I just duplicate it. Okay, so here's my geometry. Here we use the bangs, so we want to use the other hair. Density wise, we have, what do we do here? We need our, okay, we need our main density without the bangs. So we have here our bounce density. So we just take another color mix node, grab our main density in the A slot, and in the B slot we make it a solid black. And for this slot we're using as a factor our bounce density. So if you plug this now, in the output, we have, let's make a float as well, float, and let's call it main density. Okay, so now we need to put our UV in here, our main hair density. Let's see where we are. Okay, I'm not doing something wrong. The renderer doesn't update with the viewer nodes, and I was looking at the viewer node. Okay, so we're missing our surface and our surface UV. The surface UV. Okay, so we have some hair growing from the front where it shouldn't be. Maybe in here. Yeah, because we calculated the result from the previous map. If we take the bounce density instead and take this into color factor, we should have gotten rid of this line. Yeah, we did. Okay, this looks awkward. This looks awkward because we have the parting by texture enabled. Let's disable this one. It looks way better. And here as well, you can see the lack of guide curves. We need more guide curves. Let's go all the way through and check the final result of this one. Yeah, I mean, out of the box, it's not terrible. So if we join these two, you can already see we're getting somewhere. This looks pretty awkward, so we have to adjust these. Maybe we could use a parting map in here really. Could try it out. But overall, like we have like some nice bigger clumps, smaller clumps. We have like some waviness going on, some breakup in the clumps. I'm actually quite happy, like how out of the box it came out fine-ish. Let's check in the render. Okay, rendered, it doesn't look that good anymore. It definitely needs more work overall. So, but we have a start, and I'm sorry that I leave you hanging there in the middle now, but it's an hour. I'll try to do an update tomorrow, and maybe let's try to finish these two. Okay? Then hope you have a great remaining afternoon and weekend, and maybe here tomorrow. Bye bye.